We got a 1984 Suzuki LT250, and we're going to be resealing the overhead valves because the front one is leaking fairly badly, and it is smoking like a freight train. And it's not ticking though, so we just don't want to lose any more oil, so it doesn't start ticking, and make sure that we don't lower our level. But we'll go ahead and start by basically cleaning off all of the gunk in the front first. Before we go ahead and take the cover off to make sure nothing falls down in the engine, and we got a clean working area to work with. All right, the first step is basically just we're going to take a flathead and sit here and scrape off all of the excess buildup, dirt, and gunk that's gone on here all over the engine here. We're just trying to loosen things up so that way when we hit it with some brake cleaner and we hit it with a little bit of compression or air from the compressor, it'll be able to blow off everything and be able to clean it up nice and good to be able to see everything well. That's all we're focused on. All right, now that we've scraped off a lot of the stuff on there, we're gonna douse her some spritzer. Now we're gonna take our air nozzle, clean off everywhere that we sprayed it. Okay, the next step is to take these off. They're going to be a size 10. Okay, after we remove the overhead valve cover, we're going to go ahead and take a clean rag, and we want to remove all of the oil and any kind of debris, and you don't want to get any dirt inside of your overhead valve, so be careful when you're wiping and rubbing things off. LOL. Alright, so now that we got that cleaned up, next step is to get the oil off of this surface here. So we'll just take some brake cleaner, spray it off. Once we spray this off and get all the oil off of it, set it on that rag to let it dry. Once everything's dry, what we're going to do is we're going to add a gasket maker, fuel resistant, high temp. And we're going to go ahead and just put it on the mating surface here. We're going to clean the O-ring up with brake cleaner, and once this is cleaned up, we're going to set the O-ring back in place. And then we're going to add gasket maker just to this seating surface here, so that way whenever we go to put this back on, that rubber gasket, even if it's squished, it'll have something to be able to seat in place to prevent it from leaking again. Alright, now that this has been sitting for a few minutes and it's nice and dry, go ahead and put everything back in place. Open up that guy. You want to get not a thick layer, but a generous amount. Like I said, you don't want to do it too thick, so that way whenever you go to put the overhead valve on it, it doesn't smush down and actually end up seeping too much into the engine. That can happen. I've seen people put gumps, just heaps And they get caught up in the engine and get into all kinds of mechanisms, especially like your oil pumps. Well, there you have it. All right, now that it's been sitting for a minute, we're going to go ahead and reattach the cover here. Well, there we are. Now, again, it is a size 10. We're going to get them started and get them finger tight. Now, most overhead valve covers, they don't have a high torque spec. Depending on what engine you're working on, I've seen anywhere from 9 all the way up to 13. Usually I want to go above that. This is my own four-wheeler. I'm not going to be using a torque wrench on it. I'm just going to get them nice and tight to my liking. Don't want to go over tight, just want to make sure that they're nice and firm. All right, now we'll go ahead and do the front one. Okay, so now we're going to get to the front one. Same thing, it's a size 10. All right. There's one. All right. Boom. All right, same thing that we did on the front one. Take a clean rag. I'm gonna go ahead and clean off the surface. Alright, perfect. And we're going to spray this with brake cleaner. Instead of the other one, we're going to put the gasket maker on this after we put the O-ring back in. So that way, whenever it's a little bit easier to get it on there instead of putting it on the front. But I'm going to go ahead and clean this and then get it prepped, and then we'll go from there. Okay, we're going to go ahead and add the gasket maker directly to the overhead valve and the gasket this time because I just don't have enough room. Really to get underneath it, or really to get in there, since the front's really hard to get to the overhead valve as far as the room. So I didn't take any of the plastics off. That's why I do it if you don't need to. If I was adjusting the valves, however, I probably would have taken the plastics off. But the valves don't need to be adjusted, so they just need to be resealed since it's leaking. And I could have gotten the O-rings for this guy, but I don't want to look it up. I don't want to order it. This is just something I am able to do in my spare time on the day. Doesn't take that long. And I'm tired of it burning and smoking all the time. So there we go. Now we do need to let it set for about a minute before we go to put it back on. Okay, now that we've waited a minute, it's time to go ahead and put it back on, but I don't think I'm gonna be able to hold the camera and get it on at the same time. So just bear with me whenever I put this up in there. I'll get the bolts started and then let you know afterwards. All right, now we got it on there. And so now we're gonna hand tighten the bolts and then we'll grab our wrench. And then like I said on the other one, most of these overhead valves, just depending, you'd have to look it up on the service manual, but they're anywhere from 8 to 13 foot-pounds. On this guy here, I'm just gonna, since it's my own four-wheeler, I'm just gonna do it by hand. And you don't want to overdo it because you can strip these and over tighten them. All right, that is tight. There you have it. Now we basically just have to let that set overnight and then wait until the next day, and then tomorrow I'll start her up and then we'll be good to go. But that's how you change, or at least reseal the overhead valves if you don't have the gaskets for them.